I am Livia Alexander, Thinking Food Futures co-curator, together with Ishin Arnaud. And on behalf of Residency Unlimited, we are extremely pleased to welcome you to this two-day symposium and exhibition, which we, for the obvious reasons, had to move online. The advantage of us having to move it online is that we are able to offer workshops like the one we're going to be offering this morning with our guest, Gillian Goddard. And the purpose of this symposium is to tackle what we see as one of the most urgent questions of our time, which is how do we feed ourselves given the intensifying pressures of food insecurity and climate change? We are obviously all aware that the challenges on the table are extremely complex, and the need to reimagine how we live, what we eat, and how we eat have to change. And when talking about reimagining the present, there is perhaps no one more befitting as a co-conspirator to this process than Gillian Goddard. Gillian is an environmental activist, an organic farmer, a chocolate maker, and a community mover and shaker. And in my humble opinion, she is a true visionary. Gillian is the co-founder and co-director of the Alliance of Rural Communities, an organization made up of the Caribbean chocolate companies owned and run by cocoa farming communities. She's also the founder of Destination Chocolate Trinidad and Tobago, a cacao initiative that rapidly accelerated the expansion of the national processed cacao industry. Gillian moves between small urban homestead and an 11-acre organic forest farm. This morning, she will be guiding us through the histories of cacao in Trinidad and Tobago, following its pre-colonial and neocolonial trajectories. It is my true pleasure to welcome you, Gillian.
Thank you very much, Livia. And thanks to everyone. I always tell people, give me a big problem to solve, and I rapidly rush into action, but something small like how do I move the iPad so that I don't look so distorted on the screen? And I'm good with tech, but it's just some strange things happened this morning. So hi everyone, I am going to probably move this around a bit to get the screen a bit higher. And I'm on my iPad, which I don't do workshop. So you hearing me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So hi everybody. And I also want to see how many people are here. So I may need to ask others to kind of give me information at times. 22 people here. Okay, so we can get started. So today I want to talk about decolonization. It's a big word. It's something that is suddenly in the in people's awareness. And that's new because it's a word that I've been using for quite a few years. And usually when I say it, people's eyes glaze over. So it's really nice to actually get a chance with the Residency Unlimited team to talk about this topic that really is something that is now here. It's here with us now. And I've taught a class with Yoko, who's one of the participants in Bennington this year. And as I went through the session, I really started to come to the conclusion that 2020 and these years around us is the time to face responsibility. And it seems like that's what we are being asked to do, to take a look at the places that we actually haven't done well, especially places where we have stepped forward into positions of asymmetric power, where we have the power. And this seems to be a time for us to learn how to deal with that. We have had a period where we've had to learn how to deal with oppression coming towards us. Now it's time for us to learn what do we do when we're the one who's perpetuating the oppression. So the topic to me of decolonizing cacao, which is very intimate in my life, is an area that I really am excited to be able to talk about and to share what I've learned over the last 7 years. I've been making chocolate now, but prior to that, I've been eating cacao all my life. So the first thing I would like to do is to get us to know each other a bit. One of the things around the process of decolonization is people often tend to think of it as something to do with products. And today we're going to talk a lot about it being way more than just products. It being really about how do we deal with products? How do we deal with our relationships? So the first thing I want to do is to get people to introduce themselves. And we'll do it fairly quickly. So if you can kind of give your name, where you actually are sitting, where's your seat right now? What's the city? What's the state? Or what's the country? Where are you? And why did you have an interest in coming to this workshop today? So I want to start with the RU team. So Livia, Ison, and Chena, maybe you all can start, and if there are any other RU people here. So Livia, you can start.
I get to start. I am Livia Alexander. I am based in Brooklyn, New York. Am I missing something since I'm going first?
And why are you interested in this topic?
Why am I interested in this topic? Oh, I can speak for an hour and take over your workshop. Because I think there is a huge challenge on the table in general, in terms of climate change. I think that cacao specifically is so steeped in colonial histories, in questions around slavery and questions around labor ethics. So just a few things.
Hi, my name is Ishan Anol. I am the other co-curator of the event, and I am in New York City, Manhattan, and I have been deeply interested in this topic of how cacao traveled through the time and its relation to colonialism, and as Gillian calls it, neocolonialism, not even post-colonialism. I am terribly interested in looking at that history by simply looking at cacao and how we use it, the use of it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Shana Yoshida, the assistant curator of RU's Thinking Food Futures, and I'm currently sitting comfortably in my bed in Hilo, Hawaii. And I'm especially interested in this workshop because Gillian brought to my attention that Hawaii is the only state, I believe, that is currently growing cacao trees. So it'll be interesting to interact with the trees here, knowing that it's such a special place. And I think this workshop will offer definitely new insight. So I'm really excited. Thank you.
Maybe Peter Maracush can continue?
Sure. I'm Peter Markish. I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I, a few years ago, started getting really interested in craft chocolate. I come from a family that has I'd like to think, a strong social conscience, and I've been following Gillian on Instagram and just sort of in general for a while. So I jumped at the chance to do this workshop.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Gillian, do you want to assign the people or do you want us to call out?
No, just call out.
Okay, great. Crew Chocolate, I've been reading a lot about you and I don't know your name though.
Yeah, Carla. Is Carla here?
Yes.
Hi.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Carla. I'm interesting because first I love Gillian and she's a great inspiration for me. But also we make chocolate and we're here by Sacramento, California today. And decolonization is a subject that we've been, our whole life involved. But thank you, Gillian, for your invitation.
Yeah, and Carla is one of the people that I see myself as co-leading this workshop with, even though she doesn't think that, but Carla actually knows a lot more about some of the practicalities than I do. and in a different context, because she does her work more in Central America, whereas I am more in the Caribbean. So it's so nice to have you here. Yeah.
And if I'm allowed to put a plug in for your chocolates, we should all check them out.
Yeah. Okay.
David Gidia? I'm sorry, David.
Hi guys, I'm David Gabriella. I'm currently in Jacksonville, Florida, but I'm from Trinidad originally. I think I got interested in because I grew up in Trinidad, but I really didn't have any idea of like the deep kind of like cultural and historical part that the cocoa industry kind of played. And I hadn't even seen a cocoa tree for most of my life, but then I kind of met people like Gillian, and I got kind of just interested in it, and I thought it was like an important part of like Trinidadian culture that I should know more about. So that's why I'm here.
And you are in Florida right now, right?
Jacksonville right now.
Yeah. Okay. Any other Trinis here? Shazana, are you here as yet?
I think Candice is here too.
Candice, maybe you could introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Candice. I'm also from Trinidad, and I am currently sitting in a very concreted area. I'm interested in this workshop mainly because I really like chocolate, and I feel like I have a mild appreciation for cocoa, but really beyond that, I don't actually know much about it historically. So I'm here to just kind of learn more about chocolate and learn more about cocoa and its origins and how we kind of, evolved its use over time.
Great. Thanks, Candice. Nice to have you here. I saw somebody else. Livia, I'm kind of hijacking this, but is it Michael Cooper who is also here?
Yes. Hi, good morning. This is Michael. I'm from Trinidad originally. I actually met Gillian at a permaculture course in Trinidad 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
When I was living back home. Currently, I'm based in New York and spent a lot of time in Philadelphia and LA. My interest in cocoa stems from, my family was involved in cocoa in various aspects as farmers and processors, several generations ago, and I'd like to bring that tradition back into the family. And also as an amateur historian, I'm very curious about the history of it.
Right. Nice to have you here. Haven't seen him in over a decade. Is there anyone here who's from Central America right now who's sitting there? And I think any other time zones?
I'm from Trinidad.
Okay, that's Colleen?
Yes.
Yeah, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Let me get the camera. Good morning, everyone. My name is Colleen, is one of two pronunciations, Colleen or Kelene Blake Fallon. I am sitting in Austin, Texas, but I am from Trinidad. I grew up next to a cocoa field in San Rafael, and it wasn't my field, it was my neighbor's field. So I wasn't really involved in the processing of the cocoa, but it is part of my life growing up. And I am here because that is part of it. I'm also an herbalist. And in my opinion, I think of cocoa as a form of medicine. And so many other plants as forms of medicine. And I really, truly believe in, like you said, decolonizing everything.
Right.
So that is what brought me. Once I saw the name, I was like, this is it. I will be here. I don't know anybody else in this call, but I will be here because this is a beautiful topic. Thanks for having it.
Yeah, nice to have you here. I'm going to do just a few more introductions and then we'll get started with some of the other content, and then I'll come back to some other people. I know there are a couple other chocolate makers here, and or chocolate related people, and I want you all to meet them because the ones that are here, Joy, are you here? Is Joy Taylor here?
Yeah.
There you are. Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Can you introduce yourself?
I'll try.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm Joy Thaler. I'm from Cocoa Compassion. I'm sitting in my basement in New York right now, and I'm so happy to see you because it's been a while.
It has.
And let's see. So I came to Cacao through my work at Thomson Reuters and working with people in the coffee supply chain. I was really dismayed to learn about the social, economic, and environmental injustices that existed, and came up with some ideas how to start Cocoa Compassion. I didn't know where I was inserting myself, but I knew I had some skill sets. And that led me to Seattle, to the Unconference, where I met Gillian. And I'd say the business has been around for about 5 years now, but it's pivoted to its final point where we had alliance with Rocket Chocolate, and we gave back and went to Belize and learned how to prune. We went to Hawaii and Hilo, having somebody else also manufacture. And we are now working with Coco Camille, bringing beans in which we don't want to. Our goal is not to be manufacturing here, Gillian, but it's a means to an end. So we're manufacturing, and we're doing our first give back this year, where 10% is going back to Coco Camille in Tanzania for their scholarship fund. And the other 10% where we started making and distributing, my partner is a forager, and we launched the business in Baltimore, and we'll be giving back.
So can we just
go
to what is it about this that actually is of interest to you? And we'll come back because I want to hear more from you over these two.
The one thing that is most of interest to me is your focus of bringing everything back to origin and empowering where this product grows at origin, and for high value skills and the ability for it to be a somewhat much more level industry. And I'm so excited to see you here.
Yeah, same here. God. So a lot of us met at a space called the Northwest Chocolate Festival, which is probably the most progressive space for chocolate making. And it really is a place, it's in Seattle, usually happens when there is actually no COVID. It happens there every year, and people come from all over the world to talk about chocolate. And that's really, the first year that I went there were 2 of us from Origin, and now there are dozens of people who are making chocolate at Origin. Okay, I'm gonna ask a couple more people. Is Sunita here? I'm not seeing her listed under her name, but if you're here, say hi. And is there anybody else here who's actually doing stuff in chocolate? You can either put a note or raise your hand or just turn your mic off. No, okay. And so 2 other introductions. Gabriella, can you tell us where you are and what brought you here?
Hi, everyone. I'm from Mexico City, but I live in New York for 14 years. I'm an artist, and I'm a lover of my culture. So chocolate is very important in Mexico. So it's one of the endemic products that comes from Mexico for the world, and it's always fascinating for me. So as an artist, and as a Mexican, and part of my culture is the food. I'm just here to learn. I'm here to rethink myself and learn from each other. I'm so curious, and I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for being here. And yes, Mexico is where a lot of stuff about chocolate's happening. About a few years ago, there actually were some interesting archaeological discoveries and botanical discoveries where the route of cacao from Ecuador to Mexico was found in a much more complete way. And so even the story of who's in this room, how we got here, and how we're combined with the story of cacao, particularly the pre-colonial story for a lot of us, is really fascinating. And there is absolutely no way in this hour and a half today and the hour and a half tomorrow that I'm going to do more than scrape the surface. But what I wanted us to do is to do it in a way that we see each other, because that's part of what decolonization is about. to actually see what's around you, to see the resources that are available to you without having to go many miles away. So that's why I'm taking the time to do things like let's get to them, because that's really where our presence and our life and our power lies. So who's going to put the slides up? Is it Shana? Because I'm just going to do a couple of slides because I want to bring some issues up and then we will come back and talk again. Make yourself comfortable because, it's super important that we turn away from this idea of presenting ourselves as though we are constantly in a witness box or being judged, and just get a chance to actually learn without it having to be stressful, without it having to be disconnected. So I want to make sure that we get to do that here today. Just relax, even though things may go haywire, we are here with each other and that's actually what counts. So Shana, you have the slides?
Jean is sharing her screen.
Yeah, if you can just do the first slide. So this is a slide that we used to advertise the workshop. And I want you to look from about, 12 minutes past. And that first little ramekin there has cocoa beans in it. And to the right of that, if you could, just stop there for a while because I'm going to stay on this slide. To the right of that, you'll see a cocoa pod. And I actually have one here with me today. I have two. And I meant to break them before I brought them to the room, but I didn't. So I'm just going to break it on the ground there. And I'm going to do this slowly because my camera's, when you open the pod, those are the seeds inside. And in your kit, I wasn't able to put these seeds because they're wet and you have to get special permits to bring them. But these are the cocoa beans in case you've never seen it before. And it's single seeds covered with a white pulp. And I'm gonna put that back in there. So if you look, that thing you're seeing at about 12 minutes past, those are the dried beans. So the pulp is still on it. And in your tasting kits, you're gonna get some beans like that to try. Down below the seeds is the most, other than the juice, which comes from these, which I couldn't send, but I have a glass of it here. That is cocoa pulp juice. So these seeds have a pulp on them. And when you harvest and you put it inside of a box, this drains out. And there's a paper that just came out that spoke about that really was the form of cacao that was most intimately known by people. It's the easiest thing. Gabriella, have you tasted that? Have you ever sucked a cocoa bean? Well, I know, of course, Carla, that's a regular, but you grew up sucking cocoa beans, right? In my school, yeah.
Sorry, actually, yes, sure. I taste the just roasted, but not fresh. Because not you have fresh. To rotten, not something like separate the,
So when you pick this from the tree, as a child, I would pick this from the tree, and I'm sure Michael and also who else said they were from. This is normal right now. In my school, we used to pay 5 cents for this, for the pod, and they used to sell it to us as a snack during our break time. So that sucking of that pulp around the bean is actually the way that most of us in places that grow cacao, up to recently, that was our best knowledge of cocoa, which is what we, cacao, we call it cocoa. And under those beans, you'll see a circular thing, a ball. And that's what we in Trinidad call a cocoa ball. It's in every cacao growing region of the world. And that's the main way in which we consume cacao. It's in your kit. You have 2 little ones of those. And basically, you roast, crack, and take off the skin, the dry pulp off of the bean. And then what's remaining, you grind it. And you grind it, and as you grind it, the cocoa butter starts to melt because it melts at human body temperature. So it becomes like a slurry. And in that ground up brown slurry, you then put spices. And you make it into balls, and as it cools again, it forms into a solid ball. I have some of those here with me. Are you all seeing me at all when I'm holding these things up? I'm trying to do it slowly. So this is a cocoa ball. And I can't give it to you all to smell, but when you get your kit, you'll smell it. It is incredibly fragrant. This cocoa ball has nutmeg, cinnamon, cloves, bay leaf, orange peel, tonka bean, and something called chopped portent. So our knowledge of how cacao was used, part of that comes from this tradition that has been passed on for thousands of years. The first domestication of cacao that they're finding in Ecuador looks like it might be about 3,800 to 4,000 something years ago. So that means that this form of eating cacao is the form ground down pretty simply on something called a metate, which would be an easy piece of stone or something that you can pick off of the surface of the earth. And then you take another hard surface, whether it's wood or also stone, and you grind that down. You keep pushing on the beans until they get liquidy, slurry. You add in the spices and you reform it. Each part of the cacao growing world has a different form of that. Some places do it in sticks, some places do it in discs, some places do it in smaller balls, bigger balls, oval shape. So that ball, which most people in chocolate eating regions don't even know about, that's actually the way that most of us grew up eating cacao. That's our association. When I think of my grandmother, I think of a house with that boiling on the stove with the smell wafting through. Our memories are generally not of chocolate. They're of what in the Caribbean we call that cocoa tea. And in different places, it's called different names. Carla, what is it called? What are you accustomed to calling it?
Wheels, ruedas, tabletas.
What's it called?
Either wheels, you know, like a chocolate wheel, or
yeah,
or pelota, ball.
Okay, so it's like called like pelote, like a ball, right? And so that bowl, traditionally, you put it in water on the stove or in milk and you boil it. And you can add sugar at that point and the flavors come out. We've kind of created a lazy version of it, but you can kind of just pour boiling water over it, but it doesn't give the same flavor. So when you get your balls, the little ones in the kit, let them boil. Underneath that, to the left, is corn. Now, and I see that Crew Chocolate is selling a roasted purple corn because that's often the tradition. This is a yellow corn, and what you would get in your kit, I roasted it. Traditionally, corn is nixtamalized, which is one of the reasons it never took off in Europe. Because if you don't nixtamalize corn and you eat a lot of it, you'll actually get malnutrition, because you don't get to mobilize all the nutrients in it without nixtamalization, which is a fairly lengthy process of adding an alkaline substance. And then that changes the structure of the corn and allows it to be used as a dough. So in cacao areas, traditionally, pre-colonial areas, you could go into an area or around your house and you get a drink, a cocoa tea drink that contains all kinds of additions that are relevant for whether do you need a full belly? Do you need to feel a little more sexually excited? Do you need to get something that quenches your thirst? You need something light that's not as heavy as a normal cacao. So I'm only showing a few things here, but there were hundreds of things that people added to cacao. So next to the corn is something called, we call it ruku in Trinidad. And if you look to the left on the picture, you'll see a green pod, and the open one has little red seeds in it. That's called achiote. In the Western world, it's usually used to color cheese. So that orange cheese you see in the supermarkets, this is often what's used to color it. It has a specific smell, flavor, taste, and there's a drink called tasca latte that was made from the cocoa ball and the ruku or the achiote. It's very refreshing. Nowadays, people also add milk to it. As you go up, the next few things are actually what happened in the colonial and post-colonial period. So that's a bar of chocolate. That's drinking chocolate, cocoa butter, and cocoa powder. So, and the only thing that isn't represented there in the bowls, but is on the left, you'll see a green leaf. That's called Piper marginatum, and it's from the black pepper family. And it's a leaf that has a flavor like anise or sarsaparilla. And that was also one of the things when you were in a cocoa region that would get added to cocoa. So what we understand as chocolate is really just a little piece of what was available in the pre-colonial period, and which really didn't get carried with it with people who were settling from Europe, and which most people in the Western world are very unfamiliar with all of these computations and these permutations of how you can drink cacao, not eat it, but drink it. So that's my first slide. The next slide, and then I want us to chat a little bit more. Is it possible to decolonize anything? I mean, that's a question that keeps going through my head. We are here, I mean, in the Caribbean, the whole colonial process was really lightish in the 1500s and then got really heavy. In Trinidad, the Spanish were the first to colonize Trinidad, and they really were not able to make any money to settle. And so in the late 1700s, they invited the French to come. The French somehow seem to have created a process like a machine of colonization, where they were able to extract profits at a level that was almost unknown for the Spanish. So our process of heavy settler colonization in Trinidad didn't actually start till the 1800s. And so that was the period of cacao. So can I honestly say that 200 years later, that it's actually possible for me to look at this thing called cacao and decolonize it? Is it possible to remove mining? Because mining is very, very much, mining for minerals is very, very much part of the colonial process. Is that possible? I wouldn't be able to have chocolate. I wouldn't be able to have those drinks. Even the bowl is now made with a metal mill. So is that possible? And that's part of what I want us to think a little bit about as we move through this conversation here today. Is that arrogant of me to actually even think that it is possible to have this conversation? What does that mean? Is it a new form of combining things that have now been gained with things that have been lost or what we have remnants of? So if you could just turn off the PowerPoint and let's come back a bit. So maybe we can do some introductions and also have our eyes. Would you like to say something?
Your sound got bad, so just wait a second and then start speaking maybe.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
No problem. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Yoko, you and I have had extensive discussions about colonization, but I would like you to introduce yourself, like your name, where you are right now, and what brought you to the talk here today.
Hi, everybody. I'm from Japan, but I'm Brooklyn, New York-based artist, but I teach in rural Vermont, Bennington College. So I am still here in Bennington. I would also question, how do I situate myself? And I came to this workshop because I really wanted to reconnect with Gillian and keep building a relationship, a humanitarian relationship, and keep learning, how to deal with oppression through like sensory or bodily experience and memory, and thinking about geographies and stories and land.
Thank you, Yoko. Sunita, I see your hand now. Can you say hi?
Yes. Hi, I'm putting on
my... So maybe you could introduce yourself now, your name, where are you currently sitting, and what brought you here?
Okay, so my name is Sunita de Touré. I live in Palo Alto, California, and I, for many years, had a little boutique shop called the Chocolate Garage in an old garage in Palo Alto. And we did a lot of education. So we did education of any customers who came in. It was really set up more like a tasting room where people could sit, and every time they came in on a Saturday when we were open, there would be multiple samples to taste, so for free. So they would sit and taste and experience all the different flavors and understand what Gillian was just mentioning, you know, fermentation, drying, all the different steps that had to go on. So it was really lighting up people's understanding of cacao and the supply chain. And our focus was really to, I don't mean to go on, but I feel like this is important to say, and this is sort of describes why I'm on the call, was really to help people understand why chocolate made with cacao that was purchased in a more fair way than it has been being dealt, directly from farmers, carefully fermented, was so much more expensive than the average candy bar at the store. And so it was really like undertaking that education with folks and trying to develop more direct relationships with makers here, as well as extending that supply chain, you know, getting to the cacao farmers as well, in terms of being part of that consistent supply chain where high priced goods could be sold and people could understand them and value them. Yeah, so that's what I did for many years. And then I closed that a few years ago and do travel with folks where we go to cocoa origins and bring people. We went to Nicaragua, Cuba, Hawaii, India. Trinidad is on the list, but obviously right now there's no traveling happening. So, but that's also educational, and we try to bring we have a filmmaker come with us each time and try to capture the really unique stories of that country, what they're doing, what cacao means to them, sort of tell those stories as well in little documentaries. So I think that covers it.
Thanks, Sunita. It's great to have you here. So the people, I'm introducing certain people deliberately because if you want to see what's happening with the decolonization process in cacao, some of these people are people that it's important to keep an eye on. Because there are people who are going to say, someone who I've been friends with online for many years. Can you introduce yourself?
Gillian, you were breaking up. Do you want to try it again? Who are you calling on?
Yes.
So
Lauren Prague. Can you introduce yourself? Okay, yeah, there we go.
Sorry about that. Yeah, hi, I am of Trinidadian ancestry and I live in Toronto. And I'm just really excited. I've also been following Gillian's work for a while and am really interested in learning more about food sovereignty and I guess the colonial and decolonial connections. And I've learned a little bit about chocolate from some podcasts and different things. So I'm really just starting to dive deeper into that. And I was really excited about this workshop. So thank you so much.
Thanks for coming, Lauren. So as we move through, if you have questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat at the side. Okay, can I get the slides? Can I get the slides back, please?
Sure. Gillian, I will just suggest something. From time to time, the internet connection is getting bad and we don't hear what you're saying. So maybe in those moments when I do this, it would be just good to stop for a second, wait 2-3 seconds, and then start again. Because we lost you a few times, okay? Great. So I'll be sharing the screen again. Thank you.
So if we can take a look at the slides. Okay, so yes. So I want to tell you all a little bit about me. And some of the stories I didn't actually learn until I started making chocolate and in the last few years. There's a saying in Trinidad where we say, "It's in my blood, cocoa in my blood." And there's a song with it too. So I want to talk a little bit about that. So if you can go to the next slide. This is my great grandmother. And she was from Tobago. My father was born in Tobago, which is a neighboring island, which was not always attached to Trinidad. So the culture is fairly different, but it's also an island that had a lot of cocoa. When she was in her teens, her mother was born enslaved, but we are not so sure about her history. She was set up as a mistress associated with for that period when she was first set up. She lived with a fair amount of access.
Gillian, we hardly heard anything about her, so you will need to repeat. I'm so sorry.
I'm gonna type this, 1 sec.
No, we can hear you very well other than those interruptions.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we are hearing you perfectly right now.
Okay, because I have a message that my speaker is not working, but you are hearing me.
Now we do. So you speak and it's fine, and then for like a minute it gets garbled, and then it gets fine again.
Okay.
You don't see us when you are speaking, right? Because we were waiting.
Yeah, I saw you wave. So
when I wait, that's the reason. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So this is Ma Lu, and my father got his DNA tested, and she must have had blood from about 12 African countries. And she also had blood from the Mediterranean, from North Africa, which we had no idea about. And I think I resemble her a bit. You can put the next slide on. This was my great grandmother, and I grew up knowing her. She, after the plantation owner died, they slipped into dire poverty. They had no access. They had no good knowledge of indigenous lifestyles because they had had money for a period, and they had very little to eat. So what was fascinating was that about 4 years ago, I asked my father to write his memoirs. My mother had passed away and he was struggling. And he wrote about his first memory in his life. And that memory, he was sitting on some stairs because the kitchens were built outside. He was sitting on the stairs to the kitchen. He was about 3, and he had a large enamel cup of cocoa tea in his hands. He was very hungry, and he said he put the cocoa tea to his head and he drank down to the last drop. And that was his first memory. I was already making chocolate at the time, and I had no idea of this part of my father's life. Cocoa tea kept them going. They would eat it, they would drink it with cassava bread. They would put different things in it to fill their bellies. And so not only my family, but across the region, when resources were low, cocoa, with its high fat content, high nutrients, a good taste, a warm feeling in your belly, this was what they used to get through. So the next slide. That's my mother, my late mother, and I'm the one in the front with the bow in my hair. I seem to have started my life wrapping my head, and I still continue to wrap it. So we are sitting on top of my great grandmother, and she was born from a Vincentian mother. We knew nothing about her father, which was fairly typical in my family. Post-slavery trauma has led to a lot of breakdown in relationships. So that's 4 of us, and my mother is pregnant with my sister, my youngest sister. There were 5 in the end. Now, my great-grandmother, we didn't know very much about her, but when the DNA tests were done, there is an unknown section. And in St. Vincent, the area that my great-grandmother was from, she is a population of people called the Garifuna, which are Black and Indigenous. And so the movement of habits, although we had no information, there was still some ways, including cocoa tea, that passed down from this side of my family. My grandfather, from whom my mother was estranged, was a German cocoa estate owner. And there was a period in Trinidad where most of the cocoa business was actually done by Germans, the majority of the owners of the estates. So I have several half aunts and uncles who grew up on cocoa estates, who I didn't meet until later in my life. And they all love the fact that I'm actually making chocolate, because they all grew up dirt poor with no access to processed cocoa products. And all they ever saw was the cocoa leaving the estate to go to England or to France or to Switzerland. Next slide, please. So I want to move a bit from this close look. So obviously, my family was impacted massively by the colonial process, what people sometimes now call the Colonial Project. And we didn't even have time to step back to examine what was going on. How does this need to change? Basically, my family, people were surviving. So I am privileged enough at this point to be able to step back now and to be grateful for what was done to allow me to do that and to utilize the privilege, because within this entire system of cocoa and colonialism, there now is colorism. I see that now. Can you hear now? Still not there. Okay. Okay. Is that any better?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yes, great.
Okay. I think when I can hear you, you can hear me. So it seems as though there is a slowdown. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so let's take a look at this slide, because I think this is super important right now. That philosophy and methodology are as important as content when addressing decolonization. There is this idea that we can just run out there and start planting things that became rare, start making food, and suddenly we are decolonized. And I would say that for me right now, the philosophy and the methodology are almost more important than content. Because if I can bring to the table a belief about how things work and how it needs to be and what is right, then whatever the content, I will be able to address it in a decolonized fashion. And this is something that if you have questions or you want to talk about it some more. So, can you hear now?
Nope.
Oh dear. Okay, I may have to go to a different machine.
Gillian, you're back now.
I'm back. Yeah, but this is very distracting. You all hanging in there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is part of the thing that has to be decolonized. Trinidad used to produce almost all of the natural gas used in the United States, right? But the resources that are generated from that are not accessible to us. That's what colonization is. Someone said, right, as soon as someone else speaks, we start hearing you clearly. Okay, well, maybe we could try more. Maybe basically it's saying, stop talking so much. Okay. So do you all grasp this? I wanna make sure that we're grasping this, because one of the ways that things are being appropriated is not really to do with somebody being from the colonizer group or so on. It's about addressing the content without taking on board philosophy and methodology. Utilizing content without an underlying Indigenous philosophy. And there is an Indigenous philosophy, and it is a global Indigenous philosophy. I have spent a lot of my time studying Indigenous groups all over, from the Sami in Norway, to the Kung in South Africa, to the Piraha in Brazil forests. And when you examine land-based societies, there are certain common beliefs that run through all of them. And that's what I call Indigenous philosophy. And there is a way that these beliefs are put into practice. So for example, in this talk today, it is not useful for me to stand here and just spout my mouth without getting engagement from the rest of you. That is not a useful way for us to interact, because as we move through this, I learn as much as you learn. But the only way that can happen is if I'm also hearing from you. Can we go to the next slide? I'm really sorry about this, this sound thing, but you know, let's try and see how we can move through this together. So, for example, this set, what you see in front of you here, on the lower right is the ruku, the achiote. In the middle is plantain. On the left is the pica marginatum. There are the pods, and there is the cocoa pulp juice. But this is not what re-indigenization or decolonization is about. As we see in cacao, you can take a product that was utilized by indigenous land-based groups. You can utilize it strongly, and you can do it in a way that is so honoring that you can hardly believe that you're consuming the same substance. It's not about the content, it's about the methodology and about the philosophy. Content and value. I have learned that same pica marginatum leaf. It was everywhere, but I had no idea it was edible. I had no idea that it had qualities, that it can grow back enamel on your teeth. I didn't know that. So the content has value, but without the philosophy and without the methodology, the content is going to get hijacked. Maybe we can look at the next slide. So for me, in the case of cacao, how is the growing system set up? What is it grown with? What is it cooked with? How does it contribute to community? How does it affect other life forms? This is what I want us to think about. The questions are not how refined is it? How beautiful is it on Instagram? Unless those questions are in the service of these underlying questions, then the value of the content of the product is damaged. And this is something that I have struggled with a lot, because our quality of chocolate is really diminished by the fact that we are also answering these questions. What people call quality, the markers. When you go in the marketplace, we cannot, in my group, produce the same quality cacao chocolate as someone who pays no attention to this. And when I say quality, I mean what people assume quality is. The complexity of the flavor, the quality of fermentation, the tempering on the bar, the flavors that are attached to it. In my group and our process of decolonization, where we are ensuring that these questions are answered, it means that there is limited time to do the rest. You have to choose. There's a choice. The more collaboration we have, the more the questions will then be added on, the quality questions. But paying attention to this makes it really difficult to pay attention to the quality, the refinement of the end product. Let's move to the next slide. Are you all still with me? Okay, so I'm going to do this slide and then we're going to take, what's up?
I think we figured out the system to control the sound, so keep going.
Right, great. So people who know about making cacao, well, these steps are, you're accustomed, right? But I'm going to say them for those who are not. You sprout the bean, you grow the tree, you care for it. When the time comes, you harvest, you transport the harvest, you drain the cacao pulp juice, you ferment the beans, you dry them, you transport them again, you roast, you crack, you winnow, you grind what's remaining, you flavor, you sweeten, you temper, then mold, you wrap, label, transport, you market, sample, sell, transport, deposit the payments, transport, purchase supplies, meet, plan, lobby, organize, educate, and on and on. This is what it takes to make chocolate. So therefore, every one of these processes has been affected by a colonial mentality. Not one single step here has not been affected. For example, when we domesticate a crop, the biodiversity drops. So one of the ways that they were able to check where cacao was brought to Mexico from was they looked for places that had high diversity. So from the beginning, the choice of what to sprout and what to grow is affected by the fact that further down the list, you want to sample and sell. So our range of available genetics of cacao is way less now than it was when cacao was grown in a more casual, I shouldn't say casual, that's an insulting word, but in a less economically driven way. So every step of the way here, sprouting, I could go through each of these steps for hours, for days. When you're growing, how do you grow? What do you put on your crop? How do you space it? And all of those are questions that, based on what the end result is that's desired, are affected. Can you imagine what it's like for a cacao community that has low resources, no transport, no knowledge of external markets? Seldom, when I started making chocolate 7 years ago, it was the first time I had ever tasted Trinidad chocolate. Most of the farmers in the group, they had never tasted chocolate from their beans, except in the last 4 years. How on earth can you actually decide how to ferment and dry when you've never tasted the end result? It's inconceivable. That's like me writing on the page and I never get to see the words. That's actually what, for us, the colonial process meant. It meant producing things, putting in the resource, and never seeing the end result. And it's not just cacao. From my family in Tobago, of my close to 80 cousins, 2 of them remain in Tobago. So it's no different. We have sprouted, grown, cared, and then everybody has to leave. Most of them are actually in the US, in the Pennsylvania or the New York area. What does that do to a place when you remove all these resources from it? Can we see the next slide? I don't mean to like almost be making you all cry. So we're going to talk a bit here, but I think we need part of what I see as this new time of looking at accountability and looking at it in ourselves, not pointing fingers at somebody else, looking at it in ourselves. means we have to get really good at seeing where there's a challenge and learning about that from others and from our core groups and from our loved ones. In my household, my daughter has never gone to school. She's unschooled, which means she plays video games, she watches TV, she does whatever she wants to do all day long. She doesn't have to do chores. She comes outside, she says, oh, I want some of this. She's 16, my son is 20, and he was brought up that way too. And the truth is, when he was ready, he started engaging with the system. And I think we actually have someone from Boston College here today, and my son is at Boston College. He never, ever took a class of anything until he was 16 years old. He played video games. So my understanding of my oppressor role as a parent, while learning about it in Cacao, it was informing me in my household. And what I was learning in my household about bullying was informing the way I planted. So this is what many of us want, is a system redesigned. We don't want this system that was created in this bizarre way that benefits very few people, that disconnects us from the natural world. So you can go to the next slide. It's 1:08. We have 22 minutes left. So this is using the tools of society to re-indigenize, right? So this is a plan. There's a economic crisis in Venezuela right now. So 40,000 migrants from Venezuela are currently in Trinidad. And our population is only 1.5 million. Okay, so just consider in the US, if you all welcomed that percentage of people, and we're still fine, we're still good. It hasn't destroyed our lives. So we were asked to do a project with a migrant group to plant a garden. Most of the people were originally from the Warao group of Venezuela, which is a group that actually lives on the water. Incredible land-based culture, so worth looking up. And so this was the garden we planned out. So basically, we had 50 meters, and the center row is a mixture of trees, including cacao. The next row is corn, the Three Sisters family, corn, peas, and squash. And then the next row, we did some annuals for people to be able to sell. And the row at the end is dasheen. And the dasheen is a root crop, taro. And then next to it is the local, what they call okuma, which is tania. So it's a root crop, and you can also eat the leaves. This is to imitate a natural system, right? And this is the way that it actually is possible for us to keep rejuvenating our lands. Go to the next slide, please. This is on our 11-acre piece of land. And if you look at it with an untrained eye, you would not realize that this is a pharmacy and a grocery. It's full of food. It's full of healing medicine. There's not a single row in sight, except for some areas where we planted on contour. And this is the type of environment that cacao loves to grow in. Next slide, please. When looking at a healthy cacao environment from up above, you shouldn't even be able to tell that it's not natural forest. The way that a lot of people are growing cacao for economic reasons is rows of trees with minimal interplanting. On the old cacao estates, there would be up to 120 different species. Cacao is a social plant. It loves to grow with other things, but there has been pressure to grow it in monoculture. It may not look so damaging from the outside to an untrained eye. It looks like trees as opposed to a monoculture of corn, but this is what a cacao polyculture would look like. We don't have time to go through all the trees that are in front of us, but we can do that another time. Next slide, please. This is what is produced from a cacao polyculture. multiple different crops on the same acre of land. One of the groups that I am co-director of, the Alliance of Rural Communities, we have a produce basket that we sell every week, and we get what's in season. Because of the colonization process, because we were colonized by people who were unfamiliar with our ecosystem, there was a cultural shift to foods that were much harder to grow, require much more work, way more chemicals, and we are trying to shift that back. There has been intense resistance from the chef community and from the higher income communities. But if you look at this, you'll see there's a very diverse range of things. Some of these are not things that were native to our ecosystem, but they now are very comfortable with us. But many of these things have been here for thousands of years. Next slide, please. So this is some of what I want to just harken back to ways that cacao can be grown with and eaten or drunk with the plants that do best near to them. On that green leaf, which is another one of that type of leaves, is plantain. And the indigenous group in the Cunayala, who stretch from Panama to Colombia, they have a drink. It's plantain cooked with cacao, and they have the cacao balls, just like the ones up at the top there. And they drink it 5 times a day, and they have one of the lowest rates of heart disease, cancer, degenerative diseases in the world. And the studies that have been done have shown that this is actually what's making the difference. That combination of chemicals in these two plants really, one of the Trini said he's craving plantain. Well, I tell you, I'll go fry some on your behalf when we're done. Yeah, so that drink is like, it's life. That is life. And it's one of the things that I wanted us to use in the workshop, because the sweetness from the plantain, sometimes I make it with just a little bit of water, so it's like a pudding. It is so good. And I also put the corn there because corn is a long story, and that's for another conversation. But it's definitely something that is friendly. It's almost the opposite of cacao in the sense that corn generally cannot be grown without a human hand. It has to be planted and integrated, but that's a way to show that we are part of the system. There's a pepper in Trinidad called the bird pepper. If a bird doesn't eat it and poop it out, it doesn't grow. You can't plant the seed just like that. Well, with corn, we're kind of like that. Without us, corn in this form would not really survive. And it's a beautiful testament to our place in the system. Let's go to the next slide. So fun is integral to Indigenous lives. If you can get your hands on some of the films about Indigenous groups, there's a really good series of one of the last groups of the Inuit to live in hunter-gatherer mode from Canada. It's on like their version of the BBC, and we encountered that series. And it's just really beautiful always, whether it's a Kung, whichever group it is, to see how much teasing, how much laughter, how much fun land-based cultures have. We got this lie that it was drudgery and hard work. And the studies have shown that less than 40 hours a week is spent with a typical hunter-gatherer group in a healthy environment to provide for all the needs that we tend to provide for with money: clothing, shelter, entertainment, all of those different things, but the essentials, 40 hours a week or less. If you're in Seattle, Seattle has a river that was actually cleaned up with a toxic cleanup. That river, the groups there weren't even nomadic because there was so much food. They just sat there and ate mussels, all kinds of food all day. They didn't even have to move to get anything else. So fun for me, putting those little Biden's alba flowers. I love to put flowers in my tea, in my cocoa tea, and that's one of the ways I have fun with it. Next slide. And then I'm going to stop because I didn't intend for us to get so close to the end. I know you know this one, Carla. Tasca latte. Gabriella, have you had this with ruku?
I didn't have, but I recognize the word, definitely. I think it's a, I don't know, we have different ones. We have tejate that is made with fermented corn and salt, and it's really refreshing.
Yes.
We also drink for thousands of years, not in Mexico City, but in other area, the chocolate, no, with this foam that it's incredible, that it's just.
Have you had the achiote or the ruku? Anyone here has had that drink? It's usually drunk cool, and ruku is full of so many antioxidants. It's incredible. But yet in Trinidad, we import blueberries and cranberries, and oftentimes the highest source of antioxidants is from tropical rainforests because the plants have to protect themselves. And in order to protect themselves, they make different chemicals, which then are what we call antioxidants. Okay, go ahead to the next slide. So this is a slide that like triggers me big time. This is the chocolate wheel of the chocolate industry. And if you look under the purple, basically it shows you what the first predominant taste is in the center wheel, and then the secondary or the breakdown of the taste. So if you look into the purple category, fruity, winey, you will see that there's a line called tropical fruit. Seriously? All our fruit fits into fruity, winey. And so we've been trying a process of naming these things over because half of the names there are names of things that we didn't really have. This wheel is not as bad as some of the others because some of them have like hay. Okay, one lesson did we cut hay down? Is there some other thing that we can find? So even the way we speak about things has heavy colonial tones in it. And we just take it for granted that this is a way to talk about it. Next slide, please. I'm gonna try and finish up these last couple. Right, so I just want, tomorrow we're gonna talk about the more detailed chocolate stuff in terms of not so much cacao and indigenous uses, but what is involved with making what we talk about and how can we decolonize it. The original intent was today for us to have our kits, which I think most people didn't get them, and they're going to get them today. The people who ordered, because there are about 16 kits went out. And so because they didn't arrive, I decided let's use them tomorrow. And if you don't have a kit, you can bring whatever you have in your house. I mean, I would love to be in Carla's house for that one. But so this here, the right-hand slide is the right-hand photo is fermentation. And it's a process where we take those same wet white beans and we line a box with banana leaves or plantain leaves, and we pour the beans inside and we ferment. And that is an amazing process of microorganisms coming in and eating the sugars in the pulp. And through eating those sugars, they kind of stretch their arms into the bean and they change the flavor of the bean. So to me, this and drying are the two biggest reasons why chocolate will end up with complex flavors and without flavors that you might necessarily want. It's something that when we first started as a group, people were just doing it on the ground, which is another way to do it, which is great for cocoa balls, doesn't work as well for chocolate. On the left is the youngest member of the chocolate company. He was 15 at the time because he dropped out of school. Many of the boys drop out of school. And many of them don't want to do what's on the right. They see that as degrading work, no money. But when you combine it with what's on the left, and the chocolate company is also fermenting the beans, suddenly the money situation changes completely. And the status completely changes. Because being a chocolate maker is a completely different status than being a cocoa farmer. And so by creating companies where we were doing both sides of the story, It allowed us to be able to change the perception of what this was about, to gain autonomy and control over it, and be able to really shift this heavy, heavy colonial setup to something that actually meets our needs. There's one more slide, and then we'll finish with whoever hasn't spoken for the day. So this slide, two of the young men on the left and two young women on the right making chocolate. There are children in Brasseseco now, or in Grand Riviere, or in Couche, who never knew their community without chocolate. And there's a lot of the chocolate makers are quite young and single moms sometimes. And one of the babies, his first words were chocolate, chocolate. And he literally did not know his community without chocolate. So it really is something that has really brought a sense. It's hard, right? There are a lot of things that are difficult, but it's really brought some amazing rewards, which we can talk more about tomorrow, about the process of chocolate making and how that is affected, how that affects the culture of a community for good and for bad. So what I'd like to do, I think that's the last slide. If we could get back the screen with all of us. And oh my gosh, I am so grateful for you all hanging in there. I mean, we started off with like 32 and we were 30. So it's really lovely to have gone through this bit of a journey with you all. So a few of you all have not spoken. So if you could, I will call you out if I see your name. If you could say your name, where you're sitting. If you can quickly say why you're here or something, what's been your highlight for today? Munali, can you start first? Are you there?
Sure, yes. Hello, hi, I'm Manali and I'm sitting in Seattle actually. And I've attended, I think, every Northwest Chocolate Festival since I moved here 10 years ago. And that's where I first heard you speak, Gillian. And it was very inspirational because I had asked the same question: where are the makers from the country of origin? And there was not enough representation. So, and I work in education equity right now. And so we talk about decolonizing education a lot. And I think I see parallels a lot here. So very passionate about chocolate. So I'm here, yeah, I was here to learn more about how we go about doing
that. So far? What have I jumped out at you?
Yeah, your story and your personal story, very much so. And also the point you made about connecting the content to philosophy and I forget what else. What was the
methodology? Yeah,
methodology, right? And really thinking through what we're putting out and explaining where it comes from, and
right,
so it's done without doing away with the original practice completely.
Yeah. Thank you. Nice to have you here. Let's see, Denise, Susan. Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. Yeah, I'm Denise. Denise. I'm currently in Birmingham in the UK, not in Alabama. And I'm an artist and researcher and educator, and very much interested in decolonizing or decolonial methodologies. And I did a project about coffee and looking at its colonial history, migratory history, and how we're all entangled with each other and what we perceive as being nature, how we're interconnected really. And so I was very much interested on your take, being in Trinidad and working with cacao and its history. So thank you so much. It's really amazing work.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Ashley?
Hi. Hi. Yeah, I'm Asli. I'm half Turkish, half Thai. At the moment I'm an artist, a culinary artist. I live in the Netherlands, and at the moment at the Jan van Eyck Academy Food Lab. So I work with food and fermentation. I did know that chocolate is a fermented product also, and I'm also really interested in the culinary history of a lot of the things that I ferment. But I talk also a lot about spirituality through fermentation, and our psychological problems interrelated with what we eat and how that affects our psychology and the way we relate to world. I'm currently working on a video project which will be screened on Wednesday on the Jan van Eyck Academy website. You can watch my movie if you want, where I talk about a poetic way of relating fermentation with the self and more of my spiritual journey of how I relate myself to the world through the food, and how we create time and value in the things that we do. Yeah.
And what is your highlight for today so far?
I really like, yeah, that, I watched a documentary about the slavery behind the chocolate in history, I think on Netflix, from the Rotten series called I think Cacao or Chocolate. I like that you introduce all these little elements in the whole cacao production, because once again, a lot of people are so disconnected to the things that they consume. And I do believe that once they're also somehow involved in the process, I think the way they look at the product they're holding changes. And so maybe their way of consuming it also changes, and the way they relate to the thing changes. Because I think most of the times we consume without having any background to anything. And I think this is one of the biggest problem of consumption when you don't know anything related to it. So it's just like something that you just feed, but it's not something that nourishes you or doesn't have any story interrelated with it. So I like the things that you're really busy with, and I hope that in Europe that it also comes that because I read something about that you were sending packages to people. I think, is this the
Yes, and we'll do it again. We'll do it again. It's not the last time. So there were more things I wanted to put in the package, but I needed a little advance notice. So what I think we can do tomorrow is really exchange information. Anybody needs to leave right at 1:30, which is now. Sorry, 1:30 my time, because we are an hour different from you all who are in the US. Anybody needs to leave like right this second, just either put a comment in. I'm just gonna go through whoever hasn't spoken and just do a quick round. Tony, can you say hi? And yeah.
Hi, my name's Tony Tran. I'm based in Boston and I teach at Boston College. And so I research and teach about food and identity, and chocolate is a space I'm not sure about. So I just wanted to learn about that. And I think my highlight today is, I think similar to other people, I'm always interested on how we have these individual flavors and memories and how they connect to these larger flows of history, and you know, how that is very much key to how we, you know, identify on various levels. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Let's see, Ruth, can you say hi?
Absolutely. Hiya.
Hi.
I'm Ruth. Livia Alexander actually was a professor of mine. And I'm an artist and a sculptor, and I create, here's one of them. I create tools, eating tools, and create events that are actually eating events that, let's say, create community and interdependence around food. I'm also a forager. And I think what really particularly struck me, Gillian, what you mentioned today was when you talked about kind of the hierarchy of jobs in working and how that disintegrated once everyone thought of what they do as an ecosystem, because in an ecosystem, there's interdependence and there is no hierarchy as to what kind of the interdependence and you know, what's necessary to get the job done. That really struck me.
Thank you.
As profound.
Where are you, Ruth?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in New Jersey in the United States.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. My first screen has everybody. Okay, who said hi? Tobias? I'm going to go Tobias, Raven, Elaine.
Hey. Hello.
Hi.
I hope my video is
Yes, we're seeing
coming
you.
up. I can't see myself, but that's fine.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Tobias. I'm in New York City. I was born in Austria, so in Europe, so one of the places that pride themselves with their chocolates and other sweets. And I have to say, the way I grew up, there was nobody ever thought about or asked about where the ingredients in that chocolate actually come from or what's connected to that. Simply something that your grandma gives you, and it's the most natural thing to have.
What was your highlight?
Hard to pick an individual aspect. It's the whole picture that really matters. It's the whole story. And may I add one aspect that I'm personally involved in professionally? I'm a biophysicist or a neuroscientist. I'm right now working on a paper that tries to understand how dopamine signaling in the nucleus accumbens of the brain controls appetitive behavior. So going to eat something and then ceasing eating, stop being satisfied, right? Stopping. And how various chemicals interact with that, particularly drugs of abuse. But chocolate, I'm sure, also has a role in there, right? It contains at least two prominent neurotransmitters that cause dopamine release.
Yes.
And no conclusion here. I'm by no means an expert on that. Just wanted to throw it in. That's how it connects to my work.
That's wonderful. That's exciting. Well, send me your paper when you reach the point that it's out. I would love to.
Another month or two.
Okay,
but I will, absolutely.
Thank you. Raven, finally got to meet you in like almost 3D.
Gillian, we don't
Oh,
hear
this
you
is
anymore.
so fun. We've been chatting online, and so this is great.
Gillian,
Finally.
I think you said things.
I think someone's mic is on.
No, your sound is gone.
Oh, okay.
Oh, my sound
You're
is
not
gone.
muted, but we don't hear you.
I can hear.
I don't know what to
I
do.
hear her.
I hear you, Raven.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. I was thinking we would meet in Trinidad, but this is good too. It's interesting, Tobias. I actually have a degree in biochemistry and biophysics as well, and I'm very interested in the neurotransmitters. But here I am in Hawaii. I'm growing cacao and making chocolate. And what really spoke to me about what Gillian was saying earlier was growing cacao with companion plants, and how not only does the cacao do better when you have these plants with it, but also how the synergy of those plants come through in the final product and how you use it and how people respond to it. So for that, I hope to learn more, and I'm experimenting with the things that we grow here, the ancient Polynesian crops, and just trying to figure out how they mesh with the ancient cacao, and bringing in this, what you were saying, the universal indigenous knowledge to the growing and the making and the consuming and all of that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to see you. Shayna, do you have another workshop starting like really soon?
In about 15-20 minutes.
Okay, well, I'll try to close off by then. Who else is not? Elaine.
Hi, I'm not sure if you're referring to me.
Yes.
Hi, Eleni. Thank you for calling me. Nice to meet you all. I'm joining from Cyprus, where I'm currently residing. I am a student with SOAS University in London. I'm studying remotely because of COVID. I'm doing my master's in food anthropology, and I've recently been introduced to the idea of decolonization through food as well as a medium. So I was really interested to explore your work, and definitely very insightful session. Also very interested in a lot of the fellow participants' work, a few of the people that spoke previously. So it's great to have these kind of conversations where like-minded people can meet and exchange ideas. So
yeah, it's really lovely. Thank you very much. Desire, you're here. Sorry, you weren't on my front screen. Can you say hi? Hi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Desire, and I'm also a student. I go to Bennington College, currently remote because of COVID too. Right now, I'm Zooming from New York because it's the holidays and school is out. And yeah, I came here because I study chemistry and food studies and food sovereignty. And I guess the highlight of this meeting has just been like finding out there's so many interesting people also interested in the same thing as I am. I mean, Gillian, your presentation was amazing, but I'm just glad to have a network of people.
Yeah, this is an amazing group, actually. Gosh, I don't want to like leave you all and say goodbye tomorrow. Yeah, thanks, Desire. Tammy, I didn't see the second screen, and there are all these people that. Hi.
Hey, Gillian. Hey, everyone. How are you?
Hi.
So the best way I can describe myself is I work in disrupting systems and institutions of inequity and replacing them with those that achieve equity for all people. So by day, I am a systems engineer. I work in human-centered design for equitable outcomes, speculative futures, emergent strategy, things like that. And by night, if you will, I have a social enterprise where I work with Black and Indigenous social entrepreneurs around the world to help scale their impact and their work and bring it to the US. I'm actually sitting right now in Northern Virginia, but I'm from New York City originally. And for me, the takeaway from this presentation is language, right? So I work in spaces where the concept of decolonization is so foreign to them. And so one of the things I do is I take these terms and translate it and immerse it into other spaces where people don't necessarily have access to understanding this work, to kind of see these thoughts and to get people to think differently about the things that they say and how they think. And so that's important to me, is just what language do we use? How do we decolonize the things that we're so used to saying, right? And so all of these things. So it just helps me to kind of frame conversations and to get people to think outside of what they normally think and outside of the confines of their paradigms, and to help challenge unconscious bias, which is a huge thing in some of the work that I do. So that's it for me. Thank you for this, Gillian. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Tammy. Can I advertise your business a bit?
Yeah, sure.
So Tammy's business online is called Soul and Story Inc. And she sells chocolate from Ghana, one of the first chocolate makers from Ghana. She sells a woman's company from there. She sells chocolate from Ascania, which is a Haitian company, mainly woman owned and run. And she also sells our chocolate, both the Arc chocolate and the Sanitas chocolate. So, and she has other stuff too that's quite amazing. So, yeah, Tammy, they're asking you to post a link to your business in the chat.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Are you okay to do that? Okay, and she has other stuff too, but the chocolate, it has been really valuable for us to have somebody that's like easy to work with, that we can send stuff to. Okay, I see Elaine Swan. And we may have to keep it a little briefer, simply to finish so that, yeah.
Thank you very much. It's been wonderful. I'm based in London, in the East End of London. It's a very multicultural area, and I'm writing a food history and a food history tour. And obviously there's lots of connections between colonialism, imperialism, Britain, and the Caribbean. There's a lot of Caribbean people living in the area. And there's an old chocolate factory, the ruins of it, about 400 yards from where I live. And it had the first women's strike in the UK. So there's some very kind of interesting, complicated histories. My highlights, it would have to be plural, but I won't take too much time. It's an amazing group to be with, particularly when I'm in London. And I really loved what you said about the labor, like emphasizing the labor in all of the processes of growing and getting it to market, etc. And also how colonization underpins many of those processes. So thank you, it's been wonderful.
Thank you, thank you. Peter, did you speak? I see just the name Peter, so I don't know if we have more than, not Peter Marcouche, the other one. There's another one that's just Peter without a last name.
It's the same Peter.
Okay, cool.
It's two different devices.
Okay, Shazana, I didn't see you there in the beginning. Are you here now? I had a Trini introduce themselves section, but maybe, yes, hi. Oh, both of you are there. Hi. Can you introduce yourself?
Okay. Are you hearing us?
Now I am.
Well, I'm Shazana, and well, this is Akash. Hi. We are in San Fernando in Trinidad and Tobago. We have a blog called Trini Chocolate Blog. Gillian is very inspirational to us because a lot of what we know about Trinidad is history with cacao, chocolate, and decolonizing our history and learning about it. It really, we learned a lot from Gillian. Chocolate, I guess what everyone.
Oh, I would say this is an amazing group of participants that you have gotten to join in. And with COVID, it's been so hard to really meet people from outside of our usual circles. And it's really been wonderful to hear some of their stories. I was really hoping that you would call on us maybe last when we heard the stories of everyone else, because everyone seems to have such a lovely story and so many interesting things to say. I'd love to have a couple hours long conversation with this group. They seem really interesting.
Yeah. So maybe I'll build some more time in tomorrow. Is there anyone that I didn't call on? Because I'm kind of going by what's on the screen. If I didn't call on you, just turn on your mic now and maybe say goodbye. And if not, see, everybody. So actually, this is exactly the size that I wanted the group to be, 30. And we ended up with like 50 registrants. So I'm so glad. Trini Chocolate Blog. Just post a link to your blog on the chat. Okay, everybody. Who here is coming tomorrow? Can you just post in the chat coming tomorrow so that I know who isn't, so that I have a sense as to numbers? Because then, and can you please, even if you didn't, great. So if people can just keep posting if they're coming tomorrow. If you don't have the kit, just bring whatever chocolatey theobroma stuff you have in that. Because if it's the size of the group, we're actually going to be able to kind of hang together and really, and I can't wait. I actually have a more complicated kit to do eventually, but people were kind of guinea pigs. As I told you all in the letter, actually when the person in Florida opened the ruku, they said, oh, this smells like a dead body. So I don't know what customs did to that ruku. But anyhow, so tomorrow, same time, same place. It was absolutely wonderful meeting you all. And I super look forward to, it's like this group of artists and scientists. It's kind of interesting. I look forward to hanging with you all tomorrow. Olivia, do you have anything to say remaining, or Chena, do you have anything to add, or Ison?
We are so grateful. It was a wonderful presentation. Sorry, Olivia, I jumped on directly. And I mean, I do have some questions indeed, but I'm happy to answer tomorrow.
Can you put them in the chat and I will address them tomorrow? And any other questions,
Yeah. I'll ask them especially tomorrow. Thank you.
You won't be here tomorrow.
I will be here, and I will be asking you
Good.
freshly
Let's
tomorrow.
get started early because we have a lot of like biochemistry to do before we finish up tomorrow. Olivia, what about you? Anything you want to say to the group before you end or anything?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for everybody. And I think I figured out how to control the sound, so we're good.
Good.
I was constantly pressing the mute unmute. That seemed to fix it.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Shayna, anything that you need to tell us?
Yeah, no, I just want to say thank you very much for your time and for everyone who joined us. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow, and I hope my kit comes in so I can taste all of what you're talking about.
I hope so too, but just walk with whatever you have in the house that you feel to talk about also. Bye, everybody. It was really nice to meet all of you all. I just am so lucky to be here. So, talk to you tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. And Olivia, you're going to get this stuff in the chat?
Yes, it's recorded, and we're going to just wait for a second after everybody logs off just to make sure that Shayna can capture everything.
Okay, so I'm going to say bye-bye too, right? Unless you'll need me.
Yeah, and we'll email it to you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.